Marvel Comics #1, October 1939, published by Timely Comics. This is the first Timely or Marvel comic book ever produced. It introduced the Human Torch, Kazar, the Angel, and others. It also featured the origin of the Submariner in his second ever comic book appearance. The cover is by famed pulp artist Frank R. Paul, while interior artist Bill Everett on Submariner, Carl Burgos on the Human Torch, and Paul Gustafson on the Angel premiered their timely Marvel interpretations of the characters with whom they would forever be associated. Marvel Comics #1 and Superman #2 were on the newsstands at the same time. Martin Goodman founded the company, later known as Marvel Comics, under the name Timely Publications in 1939. Martin Goodman, a pulp magazine publisher who had started with a Western pulp in 1933, was expanding into the emerging and by then already highly popular new medium of comic books, launching his new line from his existing company's offices on 42nd Street in New York City. The issue was a great success, with it and a second printing the following month selling combined nearly 900,000 copies in total. While its contents came from an outside packager, Funnies Inc. Timely had its own staff in place by the following year. The initial comic, cover dated October 1939, quickly sold out 80,000 copies, prompting Goodman to produce a second printing, cover dated November 1939. The later is identical except for a black bar over the October date in the inside front cover indicia, and the November date added at the end. The second printing sold 800,000 copies, meaning that its print run was 10 times higher than that of the first print. This is the first Marvel comic book ever published. There is an Allentown pedigree copy, a Lamont Larson pedigree copy, a Billy Wright pedigree copy, a Denver pedigree copy, and a Timely pay copy. For 50 years straight, this has been considered the most important and most valuable Marvel comic of all time. Kazar first appeared in October 1936 in a Manvis Publishing Company pulp magazine called Kazar. 2 more issues of the magazine were published in 1937, and Kazar did not appear again until Marvel Comics #1. The first page of this issue shows a Funnies page named Now I'll Tell One. The first 8 pages of the Submariner story are reprinted in color from the Motion Picture Funnies Weekly #1 that came out earlier in 1939. This issue is sometimes referred to as Marvel Mystery Comics #1, as the next series storyline would be in the next issue, retitled Marvel Mystery Comics #2. This first Marvel comic went on sale August 31st, 1939, with Martin Goodman as the editor of Timely Publishing. The Human Torch is featured on the cover, drawn by Frank R. Paul in this early superhero comic book cover. The Human Torch appears in a 16-page story called Origin of the Human Torch, written and drawn by Carl Burgos in this early superhero strip. The Human Torch has his first appearance and origin. Professor Phineas T. Horton is also introduced, along with Mr. Harris, a businessman, and the villain Tony Sardo. After the Scientists Guild convinces inventor Horton to dispose of his new creation, a human torch, a clever criminal figures out a way to use this creation for his own evil purposes. The story would be reprinted next in Fantasy Masterpieces #9 in 1967. This is the first Human Torch story. The Human Torch wears a blue uniform in the story. He doesn't adopt the Jim Hammond identity until issue #4. The Angel debuts in an 8-page story called The 6 Big Men, drawn by Paul Gustafson in this early superhero strip, featuring the first appearance of Tom Halloway as the Angel. Also, the 6 Big Men appear. The Angel is called in to handle a group known as the 6 Big Men and their mysterious leader, who have taken over an entire city. The Submariner appears in a 12-page story called Origin of the Submariner, written and drawn by Bill Everett in this early superhero strip, featuring Prince Namor's first appearance and origin in Marvel Comics. Also the characters Nelson, Carly, Princess Fen, and Emperor Thakor. Prince Namor, having learned of what the race of white men once did to his undersea kingdom, vows and is encouraged to make war on the surface dwellers. This story is reprinted from Motion Picture Funnies Weekly from First Funnies Inc., which came out earlier in 1939, as the first 8 pages of that story. The Masked Raider appears in an 8-page story called Origin of the Masked Raider, drawn by Al Anders. This is the first Masked Raider story. Jungle Terror, a complete adventure story, is a 6-page strip drawn by Art Panagian under the alias of Tom Dixon. It's a jungle story. Burning Rubber is a 2-page text story written by Ray Gill with art by Sam Gilman. It's a sport strip which features the characters Bill Williams, Fred Turner, Ruth Clerk, and C.G. Clark. Adventures of Kazar the Great is a 12-page story called Origin of Kazar, written by Bob Bird with art by Ben Thompson, featuring the jungle character Kazar, alias David Rand, and his father, who dies in the story, called John Rand. A plane crashes into the jungle in the Belgian Congo, and a young boy named David watches his mother die and later his father at the hands of Paul de Kraft. The youngster, trained in survival tactics by his father, is later renamed Kazar, brother of the mighty Czar, a lion whose life he once saved. This is the first Kazar comic story adapted from Bob Bird's King of Fang and Claw from Kazar Pulp Magazine #1.